Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take your sack of sources, articles, and notes and build a shortcut to becoming truly well-informed.
Hi there.
Today, we are strapping in for, well, a really deep dive into one of the most structurally complex and symbolically dense prophetic texts out there, Daniel chapter 7.
Yeah, this chapter is absolutely foundational. If you want to understand the blueprint of biblical prophecy, how the Old Testament sort of sketches out the end of history and connects straight into the book of Revelation, Daniel 7 is just
It
crucial.
really is the bedrock.
Exactly. So our mission today is to navigate this really thick symbolism. You've got the four terrifying beasts, this strange figure called the little horn, the whole scene in the heavenly courtroom, and then this promise of an eternal ruler.
Right.
We need to pull out not just the historical predictions, which are stunning in themselves, but also that deep, ultimate message of hope and, sovereignty. That's what really anchors the whole chapter.
Okay, let's jump right in because there's a really important structural thing happening here. This isn't the first time Daniel's given this kind of historical map, is it? It lines up with something we've seen before.
It's an exact parallel. Daniel chapter 7 is basically the prophetic matching piece to Daniel chapter 2. Remember chapter 2?
Nebuchadnezzar's dream, the giant statue.
Precisely. The head of gold, chest of silver, bronze midsection, legs of iron. That was God showing the timeline of Gentile world powers to the Gentile king, Nebuchadnezzar.
Right, through symbols he might understand, metals, value.
Exactly. But now, chapter 7 gives Daniel, the prophet himself, his own vision. Same timeline, same sequence of empires. But the symbolism, completely different. Instead of valuable metals, God uses these four chaotic, grotesque, frankly terrifying beasts.
So the language shifts, emphasizing the brutality, the animalistic nature of human power.
You got it. It's a much starker picture of how these empires actually operate.
Right.
And structurally, this chapter is also a huge pivot point in the book of Daniel itself. It changes the whole focus.
How so?
Well, chapters 2 through 7 were written down in Aramaic.
The common language of the empire at the time.
Right, reflecting that focus on the Gentile world powers surrounding Israel. But chapter 7 marks the end of that Aramaic section. And more importantly, it's where the book shifts completely away from historical stories into pure prophetic visions.
This is where the apocalyptic literature really kicks in.
Exactly. That style focused on unveiling end times truth using really strong symbolic imagery. And that visionary section runs all the way through chapter 12.
And the chapter itself, chapter 7, it has this almost like a courtroom structure. It helps you process the wild imagery.
It really does. It follows a clear pattern. You start with the prologue and the vision itself. That's verses 2 to 14. The main action, the chaos.
Okay.
Then there's this dramatic pause. Daniel's clearly confused, distressed. He needs answers. That's verses 15 and 16.
Understandable.
Completely. And then finally you get the wrap-up, the authoritative interpretation from the angel in verses 17 to 27. It's like the judge delivering the verdict and explanation.
So that structure is kind of reassuring. Even when the vision is baffling, there's a promise of clarity coming.
Exactly. There's always a divine messenger there to break it down. God intends for the prophecy to be understood, even if it takes some unpacking.
Okay, that structural guarantee is a great place to start. Let's dive into the vision itself. Before the beasts even show up, the scene is set in this deep, almost primal chaos.
Yeah, Daniel says he sees the four winds of heaven stirring up the great sea. This initial setup is packed with symbolism.
The four winds, like the four corners of the earth, global.
That's the idea. It represents the entirety of the world situation, all the forces at play across the globe. God's about to reveal something with universal implications.
With the Great Sea, that's clearly more than just the Mediterranean, right? It feels bigger.
Oh, much bigger. Symbolically. In the Old Testament, the sea consistently represents, well, chaos. Global unrest, darkness, the turbulent source of human history, the forces of rebellion.
Like in Genesis, God moving over the waters.
Precisely. That formless void before creation. The sea here symbolizes instability, the potential for darkness, maybe even the realm where spiritual darkness operates. So the history Daniel's about to see isn't neat and tidy. It's violent, churning, unstable.
Defined by conflict.
Right. But the crucial insight here is that even this chaos is ultimately under the control of the winds of heaven. God is sovereign even over the turmoil.
Okay, so from this churning sea, this world of unrest, the beasts emerge. Four great beasts, one after another, four successive world kingdoms. Let's meet number one.
The first beast comes up, and it's described like a lion, but it has eagle's wings.
Okay, lion. Obvious symbol of royalty, strength. Babylon.
Universally identified as the Babylonian Empire, yes, the lion fits its dominant power.
And the eagle wings. Speed?
Extreme speed, swift conquest. Think about Nebuchadnezzar's rise. Babylon just exploded onto the scene, conquering Assyria, Egypt, dominating the whole region almost overnight. It was incredibly fast.
That makes sense. But there's more to it, isn't there? A change happens to this beast.
Yes, and this is unique to the first beast. Daniel sees the wings being plucked off.
So the end of its soaring power, its rapid expansion.
Exactly. Its period of swift conquest is over. But then something really strange happens. The beast is lifted up, made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and it's given a human heart, or the mind of a man.
That sounds oddly specific, not just political change.
It's incredibly specific. This is a direct, stunning reference back to King Nebuchadnezzar's own story told earlier in the book of Daniel.
Ah, right. His period of madness when he acted like an animal because of his pride.
Exactly. The most powerful king on earth, struck down with pride, living like a beast in the fields, a perfect picture of a beast empire leader brought low.
And his recovery came when he humbled himself before God.
Right. He recognized God's sovereignty. So the lion, being restored to stand like a man and getting a human heart, symbolizes Nebuchadnezzar regaining his sanity, his reason, but most importantly, gaining humility. It shows even the mightiest rulers can be personally humbled by God.
Wow, that personal story woven into this huge sweep of history is fascinating. But Babylon falls, the lion's time ends, and the next power rises from the sea. What's beast 2?
The second beast is like a bear. It's described as being raised up on one side and has 3 ribs clenched in its mouth.
Ribs. Or sometimes tusks.
Yeah, the translation varies slightly, but ribs is common. And it gets this brutal command, arise, devour much flesh.
Okay, a bear. Strong, powerful, maybe a bit lumbering compared to the lion.
Definitely symbolizes brute strength, heavy, relentless power. This is the Medo-Persian Empire, which conquered Babylon.
And the raise up on one side part, what's that signify?
It points to an internal imbalance in the empire. It was an alliance of Medes and Persians, but historically, Persia quickly became the dominant partner, much stronger than Media.
Ah, so the visual detail matches the political reality.
Perfectly. The empire wasn't symmetrical in its power structure.
And the 3 ribs in its mouth. That sounds graphically violent, like trophies.
It really does. Scholars generally interpret these as representing 3 major conquests that cemented the Medo-Persian dominance, usually identified as Lydia in Asia Minor, Babylon itself, the empire it replaced, and Egypt.
A checklist of victims.
Pretty much. The whole image, the heavy bear raised on one side, the ribs, the command to devour it, paints a picture of an empire driven by relentless, aggressive, almost greedy expansion, just consuming territory. It fits the silver chest and arms from Nebuchadnezzar's statue, valuable, strong, but less glorious than the gold.
Okay. Beast 1, the swift lion humbled. Beast 2, the strong devouring bear. Beast 3 marks another big shift, doesn't it? In speed and form.
A complete shift. We move from the heavy bear to a leopard.
Leopards are fast.
Extremely fast. But this leopard is even faster. It has 4 wings on its back, and crucially, it has 4 heads. And it's explicitly given dominion.
This is the Greek Empire under Alexander the Great, right?
That's the consensus, yes.
A leopard is already quick, but 4 wings. That screams unbelievable speed. And historically, Alexander's conquest was just breathtakingly fast. Greece to India in about 10 years.
It was unprecedented. The 4 wings captured that sheer, almost unnatural velocity of his campaigns. He just swept across the known world.
But the speed of conquest was matched by the speed of its, well, fragmentation. Hence the 4 heads.
Exactly. Alexander died young, very suddenly, at the peak of his power. He had no clear successor, so the empire didn't hold together. It fractured.
Into 4 parts.
Pretty much. After years of brutal infighting amongst his generals, the Diadochi, they're called the vast empire, was eventually divided into 4 main Hellenistic kingdoms, ruled by 4 of those key generals or their dynasties. Ptolemy in Egypt, Seleucus in Syria and the east, Lysimachus in Thrace, Cassander in Macedon. The details shifted, but the 4-way split is the key takeaway.
So the vision nails not just the speed of the rise, but the complex 4-part division after the fall.
Yeah.
All predicted centuries before Alexander.
The predictive detail is staggering. It really sets you up for the final beast, which is even more disturbing.
Yeah, Daniel's processed a lion, a bear, a leopard, scary but recognizable animals. The 4th one is different.
Totally different. It's described as simply terrifying and frightening and very powerful. No specific animal parallel is given, which makes it even more ominous.
Just pure dread and strength.
And it has large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. And Daniel stresses it was different from all the former beasts. And then there's the final detail. It had 10 horns.
Iron teeth, crushing,
Yeah.
trampling. This has to be Rome.
Universally identified as the Roman Empire, yes, which eventually conquered the Hellenistic kingdoms that came from Alexander's empire.
And the description fits Rome's character perfectly. Not necessarily swift like Babylon or Greece, but relentless, overwhelming military might. The iron legs from the statue dream.
Yeah.
They didn't just conquer, they absorbed, crushed resistance, and imposed their system through force.
That's right. The iron teeth represent that brutal military machine. But the key difference, and where the prophecy really pivots towards the future, or at least a more complex phase, is those 10 horns.
Right. The vision doesn't just stop with the initial Roman conquest. What do the 10 horns represent?
Well, the angel later confirms they are 10 kings or kingdoms that will arise from this fourth empire. This is where you get different schools of thought.
Okay, let's unpack that. What's the main view?
Historically, especially looking back, many see the 10 horns as representing the various kingdoms and tribes, Goths, Vandals, Franks, Saxons, etc., that emerged and carved up the Western Roman Empire after its collapse around the 5th century AD.
So, the fragmented state of Europe during the Dark Ages, basically. That's often called the historicist view.
Correct. It sees the prophecy unfolding throughout history. Rome falls, and these 10 successor powers emerge from its ruins. It shows the empire's legacy wasn't a single entity, but this fractured system.
But there's another popular interpretation, especially in modern prophecy circles, that sees this as still future, right?
Yes, that's the futurist view, because the very next thing Daniel sees is the little horn rising up among these 10 horns, and that figure is strongly linked to the end times Antichrist.
Right.
So futurists argue that the 10 horns must represent a final confederation of 10 nations or rulers, perhaps a revived Roman Empire or a European power bloc that will exist just before the return of Christ and the final judgment.
So one view sees it fulfilled in the past after Rome's fall. The other sees it as a yet-to-come political structure.
Essentially, yes. The text itself says they arise from the fourth beast, which lends weight to the idea of emerging from Rome's legacy, whether historically or as a final iteration. The key point is that the fourth beast's influence doesn't just end. It morphs into this multi-horn phase.
And it seems like the terrifying nature of this beast isn't just its initial power, but this enduring legacy of fracture and conflict that seems to stretch on.
Exactly. And think about Daniel receiving this. He's still living under Babylon, the first beast. He's seeing the rise and fall of Media-Persia, then Greece, then this terrifying unnamed iron beast, Rome, which then itself splinters. It's just wave after wave of violent, beast-like oppression.
You'd feel utterly hopeless. When does it end?
Precisely. That sense of mounting dread, of escalating wickedness, is palpable. And it perfectly sets the stage for the most alarming development yet, and then the sudden dramatic shift in the vision.
Right. Just as Daniel is trying to process these 10 horns on the fourth beast, something even stranger happens. The little horn.
This is the pivot point within the beast narrative. Daniel's watching the 10 horns, and then he sees this other horn, a small one, sprouting up among them.
And it's aggressive from the start. It uproots 3 of the first 10 horns.
Violently displaces them. But what's really chilling is the description of this horn. It's not just a political power symbol anymore. It has eyes like the eyes of a man and a mouth that spoke boastfully.
Human-like intelligence and arrogance. Cunning and pride.
Exactly. The eyes suggest intelligence, shrewdness, cunning manipulation. The mouth, speaking great things or boastful words, signifies immense arrogance, blasphemy, and open defiance against God. This is where the vision shifts from impersonal empires to a specific, personified evil.
This figure is pretty much universally seen as representing the Antichrist.
Right.
Or at least an Antichrist figure, a major anti-God power.
Yes. Whether it's the final Antichrist of the end times or a precursor or perhaps both, this little horn embodies that ultimate spirit of rebellion and persecution against God and his people. Daniel's reaction tells you everything he says. His spirit was alarmed. He was deeply troubled by this part of the vision especially.
Understandably. It's a move from political beast to something more personally malevolent. Now, you mentioned precursors. Some interpretations, particularly the preterist view, see this little horn as someone who already appeared in history, don't they?
Yep, that's right. Preterism argues that most prophecy, especially in Daniel and Revelation, was fulfilled in the early centuries, often around the time of the Roman Empire or shortly after. For the little horn of Daniel 7, a strong candidate often proposed is Antiochus V Epiphanes.
Who was he?
He was a ruler of the Seleucid Empire, one of the Greek successor kingdoms that emerged from Alexander's empire. So related to the third beast, interestingly, though acting in the spirit of the final opposition. In the 2nd century BC, he savagely persecuted the Jews, outlawed their religious practices, famously desecrated the temple in Jerusalem by sacrificing a pig on the altar, and set up an image of Zeus, effectively declaring himself divine.
So he definitely spoke boastful words, persecuted the saints, tried to change religious laws. He fits the description quite well.
He fits remarkably well in many ways. He's certainly a compelling historical type or foreshadowing of the Antichrist. However, the sheer scale of the judgment described next in Daniel 7, the heavenly court, the Son of Man receiving an eternal kingdom that replaces all earthly kingdoms, leads most scholars to believe that while Antiochus was a horrific fulfillment in his time, the prophecy ultimately points to a final, global figure associated with the end stage of the fourth beast's system, the one who appears right before the ultimate divine intervention.
So Antiochus is like a preview of the main event.
A very dark preview, yes. The ultimate little horn takes that spirit of rebellion to its final global conclusion. But the crucial thing is, the vision doesn't end there. It doesn't end with the triumph of the little horn.
No, this is the critical turning point. Verse 9.
Yeah.
The whole scene shifts dramatically.
Instantly, we are ripped away from the chaos of the earth and the sea, the violence of the beasts, the arrogance of the little horn, and we're transported to the absolute stability and majesty of the heavenly throne room.
Daniel sees thrones were set in place, and the Ancient of Days took his seat.
The Ancient of Days, this is clearly God the Father. And the imagery used is just overwhelming, designed to convey absolute purity, eternity, authority, and judgment.
Describe that imagery. It's powerful.
His clothing is white as snow. Absolute holiness, righteousness. His hair is like pure wool, signifying ancient wisdom, eternal existence. He predates everything.
Untouched by time.
Exactly. And his throne isn't static, it's flaming with fire, and its wheels are all ablaze. Fire represents judgment, purification, the intense consuming holiness of God's presence. The wheels suggest his judgment is mobile, active, reaching everywhere. A river of fire flows out from before him.
It's an image of unstoppable, active, divine power and justice, completely overriding the chaos we just saw on earth.
Totally. And the purpose of this assembly is clear. The court was seated and the books were opened.
The records of history, of deeds, divine decrees.
All of the above, likely. This is the moment of divine reckoning. History is called to account before the ultimate authority. The chaos of the beast is about to face final, absolute judgment.
And who gets judged first?
The focus immediately goes back to the little horn. Daniel says he kept watching because of the boastful words the horn was speaking. Then he sees it. The beast, the fourth beast, represented by the little horn phase, was slain, its body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire.
Complete, utter destruction. No recovery.
None whatsoever. This signifies the final, permanent end of that ultimate anti-God power and the system it represents. It's consumed by divine judgment.
But interestingly, the fate of the other beasts, the ones representing Babylon, Media-Persia, Greece, is described slightly differently in verse 12. It's a subtle but important detail.
It really is. It says, the other beasts had been stripped of their authority, but were allowed to live for a period of time.
So their dominion, their world-ruling power, was gone. They ceased to be the dominant empires.
Right. Their time on the world stage as the major power was over. But their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. What does that mean?
Well, it suggests that the spirit or the nature of those beastly kingdoms, the human tendency towards pride, conquest, flawed governance, the chaos that comes from the sea, doesn't just vanish instantly from the earth, even after the ultimate judgment on the Antichrist figure.
Exactly. Earthly, flawed, often oppressive human governing structures and the struggles for power continue to exist in some form, but their time is strictly limited, a season and a time, and their ultimate authority is broken. They no longer define the course of history in the way the four great empires did. God sets the limits.
Okay, so the ultimate evil is destroyed. The previous powers are stripped of dominance but persist in a limited way. And that sets the stage for the true climax of the vision, the arrival of the hope.
The ultimate hope. Daniel looks up again towards the heavens and sees someone like a son of man coming with the clouds of heaven.
Coming on the clouds, that's imagery usually associated with divinity, right? in the ancient Near East.
Yes, riding the clouds was often a mark of deity or divine appointment. This figure approaches the Ancient of Days and is led into his presence.
And the contrast here is just stunning. We've had four monstrous, terrifying beasts representing corrupted human power. Now we have someone like a son of man, human-like.
It's the perfect counterpoint. The beasts represent humanity twisted by sin, pride, and rebellion into something monstrous. The Son of Man represents true, perfect humanity as God intended it, and also divinity coming in human form. He's the answer to the failure of the beast kingdoms.
And the result. What happens when he comes before the Ancient of Days?
He is given everything the beasts tried to grasp, but could only hold temporarily and corruptly. He receives authority, glory, and sovereign power. His kingdom is explicitly an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and it will never be destroyed.
And it's universal.
Completely universal. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. This is the establishment of the final, eternal, perfect kingdom of God, replacing all the temporary, flawed empires of earth.
And that title, Son of Man. This is hugely significant for understanding who Jesus claimed to be.
Absolutely massive. Daniel, writing probably in the 6th century BC, coins this specific, unique title. Fast forward hundreds of years, and who adopts this as his primary, most frequent self-designation in the Gospels?
Jesus himself, over 80 times.
Over 80 times. When Jesus spoke about the Son of Man suffering, dying, rising, and especially coming on the clouds of heaven, he was deliberately, unmistakably referencing Daniel 7. He was claiming to be this figure, the one who comes from heaven, receives the eternal kingdom from the Father, and judges the world, establishing God's perfect rule forever.
Wow. Okay. So Daniel sees all this. The beasts, the horns, the judgment, the Son of Man. He's still deeply troubled, understandably. So he asks the angel for the interpretation.
Right, he needs it spelled out. And the angel confirms the basics. The 4 great beasts are 4 kingdoms that will rise from the earth. Simple enough.
But then the angel immediately gives the core promise, the anchor for believers throughout history facing these kinds of powers.
This is the takeaway, verse 18. But the holy people of the Most High will receive the kingdom and will possess it forever. Yes, forever and ever.
The saints, God's people. While the beast kingdoms rise and fall, the ultimate inheritance, the eternal kingdom, belongs to them through the Son of Man.
That's the guaranteed outcome. But the angel doesn't sugarcoat the journey there. He goes back to explain more about that terrifying little horn, because Daniel specifically asks for more detail about the 4th beast and that horn.
And the explanation in verse 25 is chilling.
It really is. The angel confirms the little horn's agenda. First, he will speak against the Most High, open blasphemy, direct opposition to God. Second, he will oppress, or literally wear out, the holy people, the saints.
Wear them down through relentless persecution.
Exactly, a campaign of attrition, exhaustion, suffering. Third, and this is fascinating, he will try to change the set times and the laws.
Okay, what does that mean? Changing times and laws, it sounds like more than just political decrees.
It's deeper than that. The laws likely refer to God's divine law, his moral and religious order. Changing the set times probably refers to attempting to alter God's established calendar of worship, Sabbaths, festivals, seasons ordained by God. It's an attempt to fundamentally usurp God's authority over how life and worship are structured.
So it's an attempt to impose a completely new, human-centered, anti-God system of order and worship, demanding ultimate allegiance.
Precisely. A totalizing system that challenges God at the most fundamental levels of time and morality. And here's the part that must have truly shaken Daniel, and it's crucial for us. The angel says the saints will be delivered into his hands for a time, times and half a time.
They will actually be handed over to him, temporarily overcome.
For a specific limited duration. A time, times, and half a time.
Okay, that phrase sounds familiar. What does it mean?
A time is generally understood as 1 period, maybe a year. Times implies 2 periods. Half a time is half a period. So you add them up. 1 plus 2 plus 0.5 equals 3.5 periods.
3.5 years, typically.
That's the common interpretation. 3.5 years of intense persecution where the Antichrist figure is allowed significant power over God's people. The number 3.5 itself is symbolic. It's half of 7, the number of divine completeness and perfection. So 3.5 represents a period that is broken, incomplete, limited, severe, yes, but definitively finite.
And that 3.5-year period, or its equivalence, shows up again prominently in the book of Revelation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
linked directly to the suffering of the saints in the end times.
Absolutely. Revelation talks about the same duration as 42 months, which is 3.5 years, or 1,260 days, also 3.5 years, using a 360-day prophetic year. It's the designated time of Great Tribulation. This connection strongly reinforces that Daniel 7's little horn is the blueprint for the final Antichrist.
And the relevance for us, for the listener,
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty stark, isn't it? Following God doesn't mean avoiding suffering.
Not at all. In fact, this prophecy explicitly states that the forces opposing God will temporarily seem to prevail over the saints. They will be worn out. They will be given into his hand. But, and this is key, it's only for a God-determined limited time. It fits the pattern. The servant isn't greater than the master. If Christ suffered, his followers should expect opposition too.
Which brings us, inevitably, to the question anyone reading this would ask.
Mm-hmm.
Why? If God is sovereign, if the Ancient of Days is on the throne, why allow this? Why permit the little horn such power? Why allow these beast-like systems to dominate history for so long?
It's the age-old question of suffering and evil. The sources suggest a couple of layers to the answer. First, the theological layer. God operates on a much grander timescale and with a strategic wisdom that's far beyond our comprehension. His ways are higher. The period of suffering, that 3.5 times, is precisely measured and ultimately serves his larger redemptive purpose, even if we don't see how in the moment.
It's temporary in the face of eternity.
Exactly. Second, there's a practical spiritual purpose for the saints within that suffering. Trials and persecution have a refining effect. They test faith, burn away impurities, and force a deeper dependence on God. When earthly security is stripped away, hope has to anchor in the eternal promise. It's a trial by fire that shapes character and focuses hope.
So it's both part of a larger divine plan and serves a purpose in shaping believers.
That seems to be the perspective. It's not random, pointless suffering, even though it feels horrific from the inside.
And looking back now with the benefit of hindsight that Daniel didn't have, we can see an incredible irony, can't we? How God actually used these very same brutal, self-serving beast empires to, well, pave the way for the Son of Man's kingdom.
It's one of the most stunning examples of God's sovereignty in history, turning the enemy's weapons back on themselves. These empires, intending only conquest and self-glorification, unknowingly prepared the world stage for the spread of the gospel and the establishment of the eternal kingdom.
Let's walk through that slowly because it's amazing. Start with Babylon the lion. How did God use them for good?
Well, Babylon destroyed Jerusalem, burned the temple, dragged the Israelites into exile. Horrific, right? But what did that exile achieve? It effectively cured Israel of its chronic, centuries-long addiction to idolatry.
Really? How?
By removing them from the land, the temple, all the familiar cultic sites associated with paganism, and forcing them into a foreign culture, they had to cling to their unique identity in God and His Word alone. When they eventually returned, they were fiercely monotheistic in a way they hadn't been before. Babylon's brutality inadvertently purified their faith.
Wow. Okay, next. Medo-Persia the bear.
The Persian Empire, particularly under Cyrus the Great, had a policy of relative tolerance and even repatriation for conquered peoples. It was Cyrus who issued the decree allowing the Jewish exiles to return to Jerusalem and, crucially, funding the rebuilding of the temple.
So the empire that conquered the first beast actually enabled the restoration of God's people and worship.
Exactly. The devouring bear was used to restore the flock.
Incredible. Okay, Greece, the swift leopard. Alexander.
Alexander's conquests had a profound cultural impact. The Hellenization of the ancient world, the spread of Greek language and culture. Specifically, Koine Greek became the common language, the lingua franca, across the entire Mediterranean basin and Near East.
And why was that important?
Because Koine Greek was the language the New Testament was written in. Having one common, widely understood language meant the gospel message could spread rapidly and be understood across diverse cultures without constant translation hurdles. The intellectual tools of the third beast became the vehicle for the gospel.
That's amazing. And finally, Rome, the iron beast. Brutal, militaristic Rome. How could God possibly use them?
Two key things Rome provided. First, the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. Yes, it was imposed by force, but it created a period of relative stability and order across a vast territory. Travel was safer than it had been. Second, Rome built an incredible infrastructure. Amazing roads connecting the empire, secure sea lanes.
Ah, the roads. All roads lead to Rome.
And they also led out from Jerusalem and Antioch. This infrastructure, built for military control and trade, became the highway system for the early Christian missionaries. Paul's missionary journeys, for example, were heavily reliant on the Roman road network and the relative safety of Roman governance.
So the Iron Fist of Rome inadvertently created the conditions for the rapid, efficient spread of the message that would ultimately undermine its pagan foundations.
Precisely. God used the very tools of the oppressors: Babylon's exile, Persia's decree, Greece's language, Rome's roads and stability to prepare the way for and advance his own eternal kingdom.
That completely reframes how you look at that sequence of beasts.
hmm
They weren't just random acts of historical violence. They were, in a strange way, necessary, albeit chaotic, instruments in God's unfolding plan.
It shows that nothing is outside his sovereign control. Even the most wicked human intentions can be bent towards his ultimate good purpose. And that leads to the final verdict in the vision.
Right. After the judgment scene, the angel gives the final outcome.
The court will sit, and the little horn's power will be taken away and completely destroyed forever. Total end for the beast's authority. And then the sovereignty, power, and greatness of all the kingdoms under heaven will be handed over to the holy people of the Most High.
The saints receive the kingdom.
They receive it, and they co-reign with the Son of Man. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all rulers will worship and obey him. This is the ultimate restoration. Remember how Adam lost dominion in the Garden of Eden?
Yeah, humanity was supposed to rule creation in partnership with God.
Exactly. That authority was forfeited through sin, leading to the rise of these beast-like kingdoms. Now the Son of Man, the perfect Adam, wins back that dominion not just for himself, but to share with redeemed humanity, the saints. It's the full restoration of God's original design.
So the temporary kingdoms relied on, iron teeth, claws, brute force to get their way,
But they all passed away.
while the eternal kingdom is established not through that kind of power, but through the Son of Man, through his sacrifice, his service, ultimately his resurrection.
That's the great reversal.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into Daniel 7, what are the absolute key takeaways we need to hold on to?
I think there are two main things. First, recognize the stark contrast between the two kinds of kingdoms presented here. You have the earthly kingdoms, chaotic, violent, temporary, arising from the turbulent sea, symbolized by monstrous beasts.
Transient and brutal.
Right. Versus the heavenly kingdom, eternal, stable, righteous, established by the authority of the Ancient of Days on his fiery throne, ruled by the perfect Son of Man. It's unshakable.
So, know which kingdom ultimately matters, which one lasts.
Exactly. And second, understand our role as citizens of that heavenly kingdom living temporarily among the remnants or shadows of the beastly ones. The prophecy is clear. We should expect hardship. We will likely face opposition, the wearing out by forces hostile to God, like the little horn.
Suffering is part of the story.
It is. But our ultimate allegiance, our hope, our security isn't found in navigating or appeasing the earthly powers. It has to be anchored completely in the King who sits on the eternal throne, the Son of Man who has already won the ultimate victory.
It's interesting. Daniel himself, even after getting the full angelic interpretation, the text says his thoughts still alarmed him greatly, and his face was pale. He kept the matter in his heart.
Yeah, even with the divine explanation and the promise of victory, the sheer weight and terror of the vision had a profound impact. He had to process it, hold on to it, wrestle with it.
So what does that mean for you listening to this? Knowing the end of the story, knowing the Son of Man wins, doesn't magically erase the fear or anxiety we feel when we see chaos in the world, when political systems seem oppressive or beast-like, when persecution happens?
No, the knowledge doesn't eliminate the human reaction.
But it gives us something solid to hold on to within that fear. It demands that we consciously store God's promise deep inside, like Daniel did, trusting that the suffering, however intense, is limited, trusting that the Ancient of Days is still on the throne.
That's the discipline of faith in light of prophecy.
And maybe here's a final thought to leave you with, something to chew on. Think about those empires Daniel saw. They relied utterly on their iron teeth, their claws, their military strength, their political maneuvering, their wealth, their earthly forms of power to survive and dominate.
All the things we instinctively trust for security.
Exactly. Yet every single one of them passed away. But the eternal kingdom, the one that lasts forever, it was established not through iron and force, but through what looked like weakness, the humility, the service, the sacrifice of the Son of Man on the cross.
The power of God displayed in weakness.
So the question for you is, what structures in your own life, what ways of thinking or operating are you currently relying on that are made of iron? Things designed to give you control, security, power in this world's terms. And what might it look like to consciously shift your reliance away from that iron and towards the apparent weakness of faith, trust, and service, recognizing that that might actually be the most powerful, the most enduring position of all.